They told me to stay quiet. To take the blame. To protect the family. But the day 2 officers knocked on my door, I realized silence wasn't safety, it was surrender. My own sister planted drugs in my room. My parents backed her up. And just like that, I went from daughter to criminal. They didn't flinch. They didn't defend me. They erased me. But I didn't disappear. This is the story of how I uncovered the truth, fought back with nothing but a hidden camera, and stood my ground while the people who were supposed to love me watched me fall. It's a story of betrayal, yes, but also of resilience. Of finding home in unexpected places. Of learning that sometimes, healing means walking away and never looking back. If you've ever felt invisible, discarded, or replaced, this story is for you. Welcome to ErasedMe, where truth speaks louder than lies, and the forgotten get to speak first. Make sure to subscribe, so you never miss the stories that weren't supposed to be told. There was no warning. No eerie music playing in the background. No sudden pit in my stomach like people always describe when something awful is about to happen. Just a regular Tuesday. Gray sky, lukewarm coffee, socks with holes. I remember those details more than I probably should. Because sometimes when life changes forever, it doesn't feel cinematic. It just feels disappointing. I was in the kitchen scrolling through my phone, half reading a textbook, when the knock came. 2 short, clipped raps on the front door. Not frantic. Not friendly. Just official. I didn't jump. I didn't flinch. I think I even sipped my coffee before answering. Through the peephole, uniforms. One tall, lean. The other broader, arms crossed like a man used to being obeyed. My brain didn't immediately go to panic. I thought maybe it was a noise complaint. Or a neighborhood check. Or a mistake. Emma Reynolds, the tall one, asked. I blinked. Yeah, I answered, voice unsure, like maybe it was a trick question. We received a report about illegal substances at this address. We'd like to take a look inside. Behind them, everything was the same, mailbox tilted, neighbor's dog sniffing the fence, the porch light still buzzing faintly. But the world felt off axis. Tilted, just slightly. I didn't ask for a warrant. I didn't even hesitate. Because I wasn't guilty. Sure, I said, stepping back. They entered like they already knew where they were going. Straight past the hallway mirror, the faded family photos, the chipped baseboard I always meant to repaint. I followed, still not entirely convinced this was real. And then I saw her. My mom. She was sitting in the living room, porcelain cup in hand, pinky slightly raised like she was expecting tea guests, not 2 police officers. Calm. Composed. Lipstick perfect. Oh, officers, she said pleasantly, placing her cup down with a soft clink. Emma's room is the 3rd door on the left. I froze. What? Why, my room. No one answered. My dad was standing behind the couch. He wasn't looking at me. Not even a glance. And suddenly, I wasn't standing in my house anymore. I was standing on a stage I didn't audition for, reading lines from a script someone else wrote. The officers didn't hesitate. One headed for the hallway, the other followed. Jessie, my sister, was leaning against the stair banister. Hoodie, high ponytail, arms folded. Phone in hand. Not a flicker of emotion on her face. Not even pretend surprise. She looked at me the way you might look at a stain you didn't have time to clean. They entered my room. Benny, my old mutt, lifted his head from the floor but didn't bark. Just wagged his tail once, slow and uncertain. The taller cop scanned the room, calm and practiced. The other walked straight to my dresser, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a Ziploc bag filled with pills. For a second, I laughed. Actually laughed. A short, shocked bark of disbelief. Because what else do you do when your reality crashes into absurdity? That's not mine, I said automatically. No reaction. They'd heard it before. I turned to my parents. Tell them, I said louder. You know that's not mine. My mom didn't move. My dad looked at the wall. One of the officers turned toward them. You mentioned earlier you'd seen her with this bag? My mom nodded. Softly. Yes. We didn't know what it was, but she's been distant lately. Withdrawn, my dad added. We thought maybe it was stress. School. There was a moment of frozen, suspended, where I felt like I'd left my body. Where I watched the scene from above and thought, this is how it ends. Not with a scream. Just with silence and a lie too heavy to lift. Jessie still hadn't said a word. Her eyes tracked me as the officer reached for the cuffs. My hands went behind my back on instinct. The metal bit into my wrists. Benny whined softly. I wanted to reach for him. I wanted to scream. I wanted to wake up. But all I did was walk. Out the door. Past the photos on the wall. Past the people who once called themselves my family. The cuffs were too tight. And Tuesday was no longer just Tuesday. The back seat of the police car smelled like vinyl and something older, stale, tired. I sat stiffly, wrists sore from the cuffs, my palms pressed together like I was still trying to hold something in. Dignity, maybe. Or just the last breath of disbelief. As we pulled away, I looked back through the window. The house shrank behind me, getting smaller with every inch of road. It didn't look like the scene of a crime. It looked like home. And somehow, that made it worse. They didn't even look surprised. That was the part that stuck with me. Not the drugs, not the arrest, but the calm. The practiced performance. Jessie hadn't blinked. Mom served tea. Dad didn't speak. And I disappeared. In that car, for the first time, I realized I might not be the daughter they thought was worth keeping. I kept thinking about my socks. The ones with the hole at the toe. How I almost threw them away that morning but didn't. Now here I was, arrested, humiliated, and all I could think was, you should have worn better socks. That's trauma, I guess, making you care about the stupidest things while the rest of your life burns around you. I didn't cry. Not in the car. Not in booking. Not even in the holding cell, which looked exactly how TV said it would, cinder block walls, a metal bench too narrow to lie down, fluorescent lights humming like they had secrets. No one told me anything. No charges. No timeline. Just cold air and silence. I sat, staring at my reflection in the polished steel toilet, and tried to remember how we got here. I used to think being the good kid would save me. I was quiet. I followed the rules. I cleaned up after myself. Jessie was the loud one, the golden one. Every picture of her had perfect lighting, laughing at birthday parties, surrounded by friends. Mine were blurry, forgotten, taken last minute like someone almost forgot I existed. When she cried, people asked what was wrong. When I cried, I was told to toughen up. I remember bringing home a painting I'd worked on for days, watercolor landscape, trees blending into twilight. I was proud of it. Mom looked at it once and set it down on the counter. That night it ended up in a drawer next to expired coupons. Jessie once made a lopsided clay bowl and they cleared a shelf in the living room for it. I wasn't unloved. I was just unimportant. I thought maybe I was broken. Maybe I didn't shine enough, speak enough, perform enough. I tried harder. I joined a club. I learned how to braid my hair like Jessie. I brought home A's. But it didn't change anything. I was invisible in my own house. Except to Benny. Benny was supposed to be Jessie's dog. She begged for him when she turned 14. Made charts. Promised responsibility. She even practiced emotional support animal in front of the mirror. 3 weeks in, she called him smelly. Loud. Said he scratched the floor. My parents started making calls to shelters. If no one takes him, my mom said once, we'll have to put him down. Like he was a broken toaster. I was 11. I told them I'd take care of him. Walk him. Feed him. They didn't believe me, but they didn't care enough to argue. Fine, Mom said, but he's your responsibility. He wasn't a responsibility. He was mine. He slept curled against my legs every night. Barked when someone raised their voice. Followed me from room to room like I was his world. And I guess, for a while, he was mine too. When things got too loud, when Jessie slammed doors or Dad threw forks at the sink, I'd grab Benny's leash and say I was going for a walk. We'd end up at Grandpa's. 10 blocks away. Yellow house. Smelled like toast and old books. He never asked questions. Just nodded, made grilled cheese, and let me talk. He didn't try to fix me. He just saw me. When Jessie left for college, the house got quieter. Not calmer, just empty. My parents texted her like she was a missing limb. When she came back, unannounced, college was toxic was all she said, she was different. Locked doors, weird friends, smells under her door I couldn't identify. And I didn't ask. Because asking meant overreacting. Because I still believed I could stay safe if I stayed silent. But then the stares started. The lingering. Jessie would hover outside my room just a second too long. I told myself it was paranoia. I was overthinking. I wasn't. Because now I was here. In a holding cell. For drugs that weren't mine. Framed by the people who were supposed to protect me. And suddenly, I wasn't just invisible. I was expendable. They gave me one phone call. It wasn't like in movies. No dimly lit booth, no dramatic finger hover over the receiver. Just a plastic handset on the wall, a correctional officer staring at me like he'd already decided I was guilty. I called Maya. My best friend since 6th grade. The one who helped me hide my first bad haircut and who once punched a boy in the stomach for mocking my hoodie. She picked up on the second ring. Maya, I said, voice flat. Emma? What, are you okay? What's happening? No. I need a favor. There was a pause. Then, say it. There's a teddy bear on my bookshelf. The one with the red bow. Inside is a camera. You need to take it. And Benny. Today. Don't ask questions. Just go. I could hear her inhale. She didn't ask anything. Just said, I'm on it. Then she hung up. No fuss. No drama. That's why I called her. I sat back down on the narrow bench, my back pressing into cold concrete. For the first time in hours, maybe days, my chest lifted with something like hope. Thin, flickering, fragile, but there. The camera wasn't high-tech. Just a $30 motion-activated nanny cam I bought online when Benny started having seizures. It looked like a toy, cheap plastic, black button eyes, but it worked. It pointed directly at my dresser. And if Jessie had gone into my room when I wasn't home, if she had planted the pills herself like I knew she did, there was a chance it had caught everything. I hadn't told anyone about it. Not because I was hiding it, but because no one ever asked. No one cared about what I did in that room. No one cared about Benny either, except me. I closed my eyes and pictured Maya walking into my bedroom, my real bedroom, not the crime scene they painted it into. Benny would be there, wagging his tail. Probably confused. Probably waiting at the door every time someone passed by, hoping it was me. I hoped she'd get there before my parents did. Before Jesse did. Because if anyone found that bear first, it was over. The footage could be wiped, the evidence destroyed. And then I'd be exactly what they said I was. A liar. A dropout. A cautionary tale. I didn't know if the SD card still worked. If the battery had died. If it had recorded anything at all. But it was a thread. And when everything is unraveling, a thread is enough. A few hours later, they moved me to a private room, a visitation room, technically. White walls. Metal chairs. A table so scratched it looked like it had been clawed by ghosts. A guard leaned by the door, arms folded, disinterested. And there they were. My parents. Sitting across from each other like they were waiting for a brunch reservation. My mom smiled like she was meeting a distant cousin. My dad nodded slowly, like he always did when he didn't want to speak but felt socially obligated to acknowledge someone's existence. I sat down without a word. "Are they treating you okay?" Mom asked, her voice light, almost maternal. The kind she used on cashiers and teachers. "They gave me a sandwich," I said. She smiled. As if that answered something. As if that solved anything. "We sent over some toiletries," my dad added. "They should get to you soon." I didn't respond. I was too busy watching how they carefully avoided my eyes. They weren't ashamed. They weren't afraid. They were managing. That's when I knew. Whatever they told themselves, it wasn't guilt that brought them here. It was damage control. "You know it wasn't me," I said finally. My voice was steady, but cold. Neither of them answered right away. Then Mom took a breath, the kind you take before reciting something rehearsed. "Emma, we need to focus on moving forward. We can't change what's already happened." And there it was, the rewrite. The careful shift from betrayal to inconvenience. From truth to narrative. But I had a card they didn't know about. A red bow. A blinking lens. A bear that watched everything. And for once, I was the one holding the script. When my lawyer, Leah, walked into the room the next morning, she looked sharper than she had any day before. Her hair pulled tighter. Her blazer better fitted. Her folder thicker. She didn't sit down right away. Just stood by the chair, flipping through pages like she was looking for a particular bullet to fire. "We have something," she said. My heart punched against my ribs. She didn't make me wait. She laid it out like a story with 3 clean acts: the bear, the camera, the footage. Jesse. My dresser. The Ziploc bag. All time-stamped. All clear. All real. "Deliberate," she said. No ambiguity. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My mouth was dry and my fingers tingled. I stared at the folder like it was holy scripture. "Does anyone else know yet?" I asked. "Not yet," Leah replied. "But they will." She'd already arranged a pre-trial meeting. "Informal," she said. "Off the record. Clarify the family narrative." I almost laughed. Family narrative. What a clean little phrase for what they'd done to me. They all agreed to it, my parents, Jesse. Probably still thinking they could spin something to protect themselves. Probably thought I'd fold again, keep my mouth shut, preserve the illusion. We met in a courthouse conference room with laminate furniture and buzzing lights. Everything beige. Everything bland. Like the truth would be easier to swallow if the walls weren't paying attention. Leah and I were already seated when they walked in. My mother entered first, pressed blouse, perfect lipstick, eyes tight with calculation. My father followed, jaw clenched, suit one size too loose. Then Jessie, dragging her feet, hoodie sleeves covering her hands. She sat farthest from me. Her legs bounced under the table. No one said a word. Leah opened her folder. Before we begin, she said, I'd like to share a short piece of video evidence. She turned the laptop toward them and hit play. It was less than 30 seconds. Jessie walked into my room like she owned it. No hesitation. Her eyes flicked around the space like she was checking for cameras, not knowing she'd walked right into one. She reached into her hoodie sleeve, pulled out the bag, crouched to open the drawer, slipped it in, and left. Clean. Unmistakable. My mom's face turned chalk white. Not like she'd seen a ghost. More like she'd become one. Her hand twitched toward her mouth and then dropped. My father leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the screen like if he squinted hard enough, it would rewrite itself. Jessie didn't look away. She just stared up, frozen, arms still crossed, eyes locked on her own betrayal. When the video ended, there was a silence so thick it felt wet. Then Jessie cracked. It was supposed to be nothing, she said. Just a scare. A lesson. She looked at me, eyes gleaming with a mix of rage and regret. You weren't supposed to get arrested. Leah closed the laptop slowly. So, she said, calm as glass, would you like to revise your previous statements? The room shattered. We were trying to protect the family, my mom said quickly, voice trembling now. You don't understand the pressure. I do, I said quietly. That's the problem. Jessie leaned forward, voice sharp. You always think you're better than us. You act like the victim even when nothing happens. I blinked. Nothing? You don't know what it's like, she snapped. Mom and Dad always expected me to hold things together. You mean frame your sister? Leah said. Her tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. My dad rubbed his eyes, finally speaking. This isn't helping. He didn't say who it wasn't helping. He didn't say sorry. Leah calmly slid the folder into her bag. I'll be submitting the footage to the prosecutor this afternoon, she said. We'll file for dismissal of all charges against Emma and include a formal report of the false statements previously submitted. My mother sucked in a breath like she'd been punched in the lungs. Jessie opened her mouth, then closed it. My father didn't move. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just watched them sit in the silence they'd left me to drown in. They stood to leave, first Jessie, then my father. My mother lingered, as if trying to find a line to exit with grace. She looked at me. Just looked. And for a second, I thought she might say something that mattered. But she didn't. She walked out. Leah and I remained for a moment. I stared at the empty chairs across the table. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was hollow. Like a balloon already popped. They looked at me like I'd betrayed them, I said finally. Leah gave me a glance. They know what they did. That's what makes it worse. Outside, the sun had risen fully. I hadn't noticed until then. I blinked against it, unfamiliar with its warmth. For once, I wasn't the one hiding. They'd thought I'd go down quietly. They forgot who they raised. 3 weeks later, Jessie stood in front of a judge in a courtroom that smelled like old paper and sterilized air. She pled guilty to 2 felonies, possession with intent to distribute, and conspiracy to falsely report a crime. There were no speeches, no tears, no drama. Just a short nod and the bang of a gavel. She was sentenced to 3 years in state prison, with a minimum of 2 before parole eligibility. I didn't go to the sentencing. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't need to. I'd already seen everything I needed in that conference room, the moment she watched herself commit the crime and still somehow managed to act like I was the problem. That moment said more than any sentence ever could. She's serving her time upstate now, in a women's correctional facility. Her lawyer argued stress, emotional breakdown, academic pressure. None of it changed the footage. None of it changed the facts. She broke during questioning. Told them it wasn't her idea. Said it was about the inheritance. Said my parents told her I'd be fine. That I'd get probation at most. That I'd survive it. They were wrong. But not in the way they thought. My parents didn't escape the fallout. Not even close. They were charged with obstruction of justice, false reporting, and conspiracy to commit perjury. No plea deals. No leniency. Their calm, composed lies came back to haunt them like ghosts scratching at the walls. They each received 18 months in county jail, followed by 2 years of supervised probation. And with those convictions came the ripple effects. They lost friends, lifelong ones. People stopped showing up to book club. Neighbors crossed the street. My dad's business partner withdrew from a pending deal, citing concerns about integrity. My mom's charity board position was revoked. They didn't just lose time. They lost the version of themselves they built their whole lives around. The image of the perfect suburban couple with the smart daughters and the manicured lawn. The image they'd protected so desperately they were willing to destroy me for it. According to Leah, they've stopped speaking to each other. Divorce hasn't been filed, but the silence is deafening. It wasn't the truth that broke them. It was turning on each other. And me? I was free. On paper, at least. But freedom is a strange thing when you don't know what to do with it. I'd spent so long trying to earn my place in a family that didn't see me, trying to prove I mattered, that when it all fell apart, I didn't know where to stand. For a few weeks, I wandered. I stayed at Maya's, then in a motel, then on my grandpa's couch. Benny never left my side. He slept next to me like a sentry, tail thumping softly in the night. Like he was keeping watch over what little was left of me. The news covered the story once, briefly. Local betrayal always makes for good headlines. Teen framed by family, they said. As if that headline could ever sum up the years I spent being small so others could shine. But for once, I wasn't the one shrinking. I didn't answer when reporters called. I didn't give interviews. I didn't want to be a symbol or a survivor on display. I just wanted a place to belong that didn't require me to vanish to be accepted. And I found it. Not in court. Not in an apology that never came. But in the quiet, where no one was watching, and the truth no longer had to scream to be heard. I moved into Grandpa's house before I even unpacked my anger. It was the yellow one with the uneven front steps, the squeaky screen door, and a fridge that hummed like an old man clearing his throat every 5 minutes. The house smelled like toast, cedarwood, and safety, like nothing had changed even when everything else had. Grandpa didn't ask for details. He didn't press for confessions or try to spin silver linings from ashes. He just handed me a glass of cold water, gestured to the spare bedroom, and said, "You're home now." And for the first time in what felt like forever, I believed him. I cleaned out the room the next morning, dusty books, old quilts, a broken lamp. Benny sniffed every corner like he was cataloging the past. Then he curled up on the bed like he'd always belonged there. Like we both had. I spent the first few days in quiet routines. Washing sheets. Repainting walls. Sorting through memories I hadn't made. Grandpa watched without interfering. Sometimes he'd join me, passing a screwdriver, sharing a story about how he broke that same lamp trying to fix it 20 years ago. It was the kind of healing that didn't need to be announced. One night, over grilled cheese and tomato soup, he slid a thick manila envelope across the table. "What's this?" I asked. "Your future," he said simply. Inside was paperwork, official, notarized. Trust documents. Legal language I barely understood. I skimmed until I saw my name listed as the sole beneficiary. "I transferred everything," he said. "The house, savings, the old Chevy, even the tools in the shed. It's a living irrevocable trust. Already filed. Already done." I blinked. "You what?" He leaned back. A couple weeks before they had you arrested, your mom called me. Tried to get me to reconsider my will. Said I should leave things to Jesse instead. Said it was better for the family legacy. He chuckled dryly. Your dad called the next day. Same script. Different voice. I felt my hands tighten around the envelope. Did you believe them? No, he said. But I didn't argue either. I just called a lawyer. Why me? I whispered. He looked at me like the answer was obvious. Because you're the only one who ever showed up when there wasn't something to gain. Because you've got grit. Because you didn't let what they did to you decide who you'd become. Under the table, Benny nudged my leg gently, resting his head against my foot like he understood every word. I didn't cry. Not exactly. But my throat closed, and I had to blink hard to see my soup again. That week, I enrolled in online classes, community college at first. Part-time. Nothing ambitious. Criminal justice. I didn't want revenge. I wanted understanding. I wanted to learn how systems worked, the ones that almost swallowed me whole, and how to protect people who didn't have a teddy bear with a camera or a best friend who picked up the phone. At night, I'd sit on the porch with Grandpa, Benny curled by my feet. We wouldn't say much. Sometimes nothing at all. Just existed side by side. The silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like a choice. Like peace. I stopped checking my phone for texts that would never come. Stopped replaying the what-ifs. Stopped asking myself if forgiveness was something I owed people who never once apologized. Some wounds don't need closure. They just need space. I wasn't healing the way people expect, sobbing in therapy or writing letters to my past. I was healing by building new furniture. By organizing the garage. By opening the blinds every morning and letting sunlight hit the floor. That house slowly became mine. And I became someone I hadn't met before, someone I actually wanted to be. 6 months after the sentencing, I received a letter in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable, sharp, rushed, slightly tilted like it couldn't decide if it was trying to confess or justify. It was from Jesse. I didn't open it. Didn't burn it either. Just placed it in a drawer with other things I wasn't ready to decide about, like my prom dress, my old debate team medal, the sketchbook with half-drawn versions of the girl I used to want to be. My parents never sent anything. Not a call. Not a message. Just a legal notice about probate through their lawyer, which I forwarded to mine without reading. There was nothing left to say. And strangely, I didn't feel hollow. I felt full of space, of silence, of my own voice finally echoing back without interruption. Benny still followed me from room to room like I might vanish if he blinked. He barked at the microwave, insisted on sleeping pressed against my shins, and gave side eyes to the broom like it was an enemy combatant. He was older now. Slower. Sometimes he limped. Sometimes he'd fall asleep so still I'd hold my breath until I saw his chest rise again. But he was here. And so was I. One morning, while folding laundry, Grandpa said something I haven't forgotten. He was standing at the kitchen sink, rinsing a coffee mug that had chipped years ago but no one dared replace. Healing, he said, doesn't always look like forgiveness. I looked up. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it's saying nothing when you could say everything. Sometimes it's not picking up the phone even when your whole body wants to. I nodded. Because I understood. Because that silence had saved me. I used to think surviving meant keeping the peace, being agreeable, invisible, bendable. But now I know it means keeping yourself. Not what they expect. Not what they remember. Just who you are without their voices in your head. People ask if I'll ever talk to them again. The honest answer? I don't know. Some days I forget the sound of Jesse's voice. Other days I remember it too clearly. Some nights, I hear echoes of my mother saying, "We were just trying to protect the family." And I want to scream. Other nights, I just shake my head and go back to sleep. The truth is, they taught me how to disappear. But I taught myself how to stay. I started journaling, not about the pain, but about the progress. I wrote about repainting the hallway, about learning how to change the oil in Grandpa's old Chevy, about Benny chasing a squirrel and tripping over his own ears. I wrote about sunlight on the kitchen floor, and how some mornings I wake up without bracing for betrayal. I wrote about how peace isn't loud, it's steady. And how home isn't always where you were raised. Sometimes it's where you rebuild. Now, when I pass mirrors, I don't flinch. I don't see the girl who was framed, the girl in the cuffs, the girl whose family tried to bury her beneath their lies. I see someone standing. Still here. Still choosing herself. If you're reading this, if your own family has made you question your worth, if you've ever been the quiet one in the corner of your own life, just know. You don't have to disappear to be free. I'm Emma. I'm still here. And this time, I'm not going anywhere. In the quiet aftermath of betrayal, Emma's story teaches us that true strength often comes not from vengeance, but from reclaiming one's voice. In a world where loyalty is too often weaponized to protect appearances over people, she chose to stand for the truth. Even when it meant standing alone. Her journey is a testament to the quiet kind of courage, the kind that doesn't scream, but endures. The kind that gets handcuffed and humiliated and still finds the strength to resist becoming what the world says you are. Benny, the old dog who never left her side, becomes more than just a pet, he becomes a symbol of unwavering love in a family that forgot how to give it. And Grandpa, with his silence and grilled cheese, reminds us that sometimes the most powerful support is not in fixing, but in simply being there. In the absence of justice, Emma found dignity. In the wreckage of family, she found her identity. The truth didn't set her free immediately, it broke her first. But through that breaking, she was reborn. Because survival isn't about erasing the past, it's about refusing to be erased by it. Healing doesn't always look like forgiveness. Sometimes, it looks like choosing peace over reunion, silence over reconciliation, and self-respect over sacrifice.